Good morning and Happy New Year. I'm Denise Smiler, Chair of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. I would like to ask everyone to please silence their cell phones and all electronic devices. Also, while masks are no longer mandatory, please feel free to wear one if you believe it is required or necessary for your own well-being. Can you just tell Kristen? Secretary's here. Okay. With 6 board members present and the Commissioner Mark Mustio on the phone, I'd like to call today's meeting to order. Commissioner Mustio, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. We can hear you also.
Good.
In addition to the 7 board members, we also have our ex officio members, Pat Brown, Acting Secretary for the Department of Revenue, Fred Strathmeyer, representing Russell Redding, Acting Secretary for the Department of Agriculture, and Jennifer Langen, representing Stacy Garrity, State Treasurer. Thank you all for joining us. As the first order of business, I'd like to ask everyone to please stand and join me in a recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. By way of announcements, the board held an executive session yesterday, Tuesday, January 24th, to discuss personnel matters and to conduct quasi-judicial deliberations relating to matters coming before the board. This morning, the first matter on our agenda is SC Gaming OpCo LLC's application for a Category 4 slot machine license. In this matter, we will hear from the applicant and then the Office of Enforcement Counsel, followed by Intervenor Stadium Casino. Stadium Casino will have 15 minutes to make its legal arguments. Before I begin, I would ask that any non-attorneys who will be presenting evidence today for SC Gaming or OEC, please stand and be sworn in by the court reporter.
Everybody just raise your right hand. Do you swear for the testimony you give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you all.
Thank you. I would also ask that everyone who is going to speak to please state and spell your name for the court reporter prior to speaking. So, SC Gaming, you may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you. For the court reporter, my name is Adrian, A-D-R-I-A-N, King, K-I-N-G, from the law firm of Ballard Spahr. We are very pleased to be back in front of you. Obviously, we did have a hearing last month, but it did occur to me that it's almost been unbelievably 2.5 years since we were all in State College for the public input hearing back in August of 20. And so we are pleased to have gone through, obviously, the very extensive background investigation process and application process. And now we are here for our licensing hearing, and we are pleased to be here. I will introduce the team who will be speaking today on behalf of the project, and then we'll dive right into it. To my immediate left is Mr. Lubert, Ira Lubert, L-U-B-E-R-T, who, as you know, is the Category 4 auction winning bidder with the highest bid, who is the founder and sole member of SC Gaming. And to Ira's left is Eric Pearson, P-E-A-R-S-O-N, who is the Prospective Casino CEO and General Manager. Also joining me today to Eric's left is Mike Fabius, my partner at Ballard Spahr. And with respect to Stadium's intervention to the extent necessary, my partner Stephen Kastenberg is also here, who appeared before the board last month. We are also joined by counsel for Bally's Corporation, Elliot Trowbridge, who's sitting next to Stephen. A little bit of background just quickly about Ira and Eric as well. Ira has as many of you may know, more than 35 years of private equity and real estate investing experience. He's the co-founder of Lubert Adler Management Company, LLR Management, Quaker Partners Management, LEM Capital, LBC Credit Management, Independence Capital Partners, and Patriot Financial Partners. I think most important and relevant to the process today, to the hearing, he's the former chairman of the Valley Forge Casino Resort in King of Prussia, which, as you know, was a Category 3 casino that opened in March of 2012. He used the casino license there to revitalize the Valley Forge Convention Center and Hotel Complex, and it became the leading Category 3 casino and a very successful casino at that in the Commonwealth. And after more than 6 years of successfully operating that project, he sold that casino to Boyd Gaming in September of 2018. He's a graduate of Penn State University in the Food Service and Housing Administration program. He's a former chairman of the Penn State Board of Trustees, and currently he's on the board of the Franklin Institute, the National Constitution Center, and Thomas Jefferson University Hospital. Turning to Eric, who, as I noted before, is the prospective CEO and general manager. Eric has been working on the project for over 2 years, was also with us up at Penn State for the public input hearing, as you'll recall. And he's been responsible for the design, development, and ongoing operations of the project. He has 24 years of experience in casino resort operations, marketing, and management. And he's not unknown to some of you and certainly the staff. He's the former president and CEO of the Valley Forge Casino Resort. He was recruited by Mr. Lubert to lead the growth of that project for 2 years, which did conclude with the sale to Boyd that I mentioned before. Has extensive experience in the industry. Previously had worked at Foxwoods Resort and Casino in Connecticut, which is the largest casino resort in North America. And he's also worked for MGM Resorts International in Las Vegas on the Strip, working at the Luxor, Excalibur, and Circus properties. And he's currently serving as an adjunct instructor for Penn State University's School of Hospitality Management. So with those introductions, we're primarily going to put this part of the presentation in the hands of Ira and Eric. And Ira, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Adrian. Chair Smiler and members of the board, good morning. My name is Ira Lubert. It's been spelled for the record, I believe. I'm pleased to appear before you today. As you know, I was the winning high bidder in the Gaming Control Board's September 2nd, 2020 Category 4 license auction, and I'm the sole 100% owner of SC Gaming, the entity that I created to submit my licensing application in this proceeding. I'm extremely pleased to have this opportunity to appear before you and to provide this updated overview of the Category 4 casino that I seek to construct at the Nittany Mall in College Township. As you may know, I'm a longtime member of the State College community. I graduated from Penn State in 1973, and since then, State College has always been a place I call home. In the years following my graduations, I've returned to the university and the State College area frequently. About 12 years ago, I purchased a residence in State College, and I'm also a State College business and property owner. In addition, I've been an enthusiastic and engaged supporter of the university. I served on the university's Board of Trustees for 17 years and ultimately retired from the board on December 31st, 2020, following my service as board chair. Because of all this, I feel I know this area, the State College community, very well. As you also may be aware, I was the lead partner in a group that developed the Valley Forge Casino Resort. I started that project in the face of the 2008-2009 financial crisis and put my personal capital squarely behind it to get it done. In fact, I submit that I won that license because I was the only applicant willing to put personal financial resources on the line during a period of significant economic uncertainty. Some might say it was a risky move, but I truly believe that adding the Category 3 casino amenity into a declining regional convention center and resort hotel could turn things around and create a new economic driver and job creator in the King of Prussia area. I was right about that, and Valley Forge Casino property has been one of the most successful in the Commonwealth. As you know, that property was acquired by Boyd Gaming in 2018. In some ways, the financial crisis then in 2008 reminds me of the environment we are now in post-pandemic, with significant concerns about a looming economic downturn, or worse, possibly a recession. But once again, I see an opportunity for the Commonwealth and a local community in need of additional economic engines. As we have all seen, brick-and-mortar retail shopping has taken its lumps in recent years as internet-driven retail commerce has grown and then skyrocketed in the age of COVID. Shopping malls in particular have been hit hard, and this includes the Nittany Mall. I intend to use the same formula I used at Valley Forge here. I believe that the Category 4 casino I intend to construct at the Nittany Mall will reinvigorate the property and draw new businesses to the mall itself and the surrounding area. This in turn will create jobs and help State College Region's economy grow forward. As an aside, I note that 3 of the 4 existing category facilities are already successfully employing a similar formula, including Hollywood Casino in York, at the Galleria Mall, and the new Park Casino in Shippensburg that is located in what I understand to be a long, dormant big box store. Finally, on this point, with Penn State's immense alumni base and other visitors, tourists flooding into the area throughout the year, not just for football season, we will provide a new entertainment venue that everyone can enjoy. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. And at this point, I'm going to ask Eric Pearson, and our council to give you a full formal presentation about the project. Eric formerly worked with me at Valley Forge Casino Resort, where he served as the CEO and general manager. I'm very happy to have him on my team again, as he knows how to operate casino properties in a successful and responsible fashion. He also knows how casino properties can be good corporate citizens in the communities in which they operate. And that's why I asked Eric to serve as the CEO and general manager in my State College casino, both in the development phase and once it's open. I'll be available to answer any of your questions that you may have at the conclusion of our presentations. Thank you. Eric.
Good morning, Chair Smiler and members of the board. My name is Eric Pearson, and I think we have the spelling. Thank you so much for your time here today. I'll be going over through an overview of the project, beginning with a brief timeline of the licensing process thus far. So on September 2nd, 2020, Mr. Lubert won the Category 4 license auction to develop a casino with a bid of $10,101. This was the first Category 4 auction conducted with eligibility extending beyond the slot machine licensees. Mr. Lubert paid that winning bid amount the very next day on September 3rd via a wire transfer from his personal accounts. This validated the General Assembly's intent and goal with the expanded eligibility by generating more revenue than would have existed with the second highest bid. The radius center point for the project was designated within a 15-mile point in Unionville Borough in Center County, Pennsylvania. The casino site location was later specifically identified as the former Macy's department store at the Nittany Mall in College Township. Mr. Lubert then formed 3 entities as his wholly owned business structure for the proposed casino operations on November 5th, 2020. These entities are SC Gaming LLC, SC Gaming OpCo LLC, and SC Gaming Holdco LLC. And another entity, 2901 ECA Associates LLC, was previously formed to secure the right to acquire the former Macy's department store location at the Nittany Mall. And the chart on the slide there shows the ownership structure of those entities. Mr. Lubert submitted his Category 4 gaming license application to the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board in the name of his wholly owned entity, SC Gaming OpCo LLC, on March 2nd, 2021. As part of our development processes, we submitted and received conditional approval of our land development plan by College Township on July 12th, 2021. We held our public input hearing on August 16th, 2021, in-state college at the Penn Stater Hotel and Conference Center. That land development plan was final approved and recorded by College Township on December 28th of 2022. And that brings us to this hearing today. I'll do a quick overview of the Nittany Mall location and the former Macy's department store where we'll be locating the casino. So the Nittany Mall is an existing 543,000 square foot mall with excellent access, visibility, and parking. It has a good central location with easy access to I-99, I-80, and US 322. The casino project is designed to create and encourage revitalization opportunities within the Nittany Mall. The Nittany Mall, as Ira mentioned, like many smaller town malls, has gone through some rough times and is currently about 50% occupied. We seek to adaptive reuse of the roughly 94,000 square foot former Macy's department store, which is an anchor store on the site. It's highlighted in yellow on the image there. The Nittany Mall resides in the existing College Township Commercial District and has excellent infrastructure and nearby shopping, dining, and related businesses that we are very excited to co-locate this casino project with. As part of our application process, we completed a traffic impact study on the project. There are some highlights of that study is there are 6 points of access into the casino site at the Nittany Mall. 3 are signalized, 3 are unsignalized, and we have access to over 2,000 parking spots within the mall complex. There are only minor entry point changes needed for the casino development, which we have and are already reflected in our final and recorded land development plan with College Township. The site and surrounding roadway infrastructure, as currently designed, is more than adequate to support the addition of the proposed casino development, originally designed to handle the entirety of the mall. And in addition to this, we will perform a post-development traffic study 1 year after opening of the casino to verify all of the initial results and assumptions of the previous study are good, and if there are any changes that we need to make, we can do that at that time. We engaged with eConsult Solutions to perform a local and economic impact study for the project. eConsult worked. Oh, I did it. There you got it. Thank you. eConsult worked directly with the local municipal department leaders and College Township staff to determine the project impact to the community's infrastructure. These were their findings. In terms of street maintenance, negligible impact. The proposed location is already built to handle high levels of commercial activity, well beyond what the casino will generate. From a sanitation, water, and sewer standpoint, also a negligible impact. No additional improvements are needed to meet the usage and demand of the casino. With the police force, again, no material impact on the department's current police force staff and or allocated police service hours to College Township, with an estimate of about 6.2 calls per month. For fire department, no additional anticipated increase in fire calls or related expenses due to the casino project. For emergency medical services, not anticipated that the proposed casino would create any further capacity challenges for Center LifeLink EMS services, with an estimate of only 2 calls per month. eConsult also completed an economic impact study for the project, and the primary results they found are that the regional market draw of the casino is expected to have a net positive impact on College Township tourism, helping to revitalize the Nittany Mall and attract other retail and hospitality operators to the area. The proposed casino's customers will be a mix of local and out-of-town destination, either for the casino attraction and may stay longer in the area because of the entertainment and experiences the casino will provide. These customers bring additional potential spending into the community and other local businesses, including restaurants, hotels, and retail. The casino development is expected to have a negligible impact on College Township capital improvement needs, and tax revenues to the township from the casino will be a significant net positive to the township budget. From a direct construction and development standpoint, the project is estimated to deliver around 350 direct FTEs or full-time equivalencies and 170 indirect positions. The construction budget is $35 million, and the upfront positive impacts to the economy with direct, indirect, and induced impacts are directly for College Township, $43.6 million in one-time economic impact, supporting 360 jobs, and $16.4 million in employee earnings. To the larger Center County, $61.4 million in one-time economic impact, supporting 460 jobs, and $21.3 million in employee earnings. And to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as a whole, $73.3 million in one-time economic impact, supporting 520 jobs, and $24.7 million in employee earnings, with $1 million in personal income, sales, and business taxes during the construction period alone. General overview of the project in its totality is $127.6 million project budget. The casino will be built in a 94,000 square foot facility, and it will be completed in a single phase. Construction is expected to take about 12 months. We are envisioning a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation with 750 slot machines, 30 table games, and a retail sports book. For non-gaming amenities, we will have a sports-themed restaurant and bar which will also include a stage for live entertainment and other events. In addition to our sit-down restaurant, we'll have a quick-serve food court with multiple outlets. I have a few architectural renderings to share to give you some idea of the design approach, and our intent is really to bring a first-class casino to Center County. This is our entry experience here. This is our interior floor layout. The color-coded areas, the light red is the slot floor. The darker red areas are where our table game pits are designed to go. The blue areas are our F&B areas. The larger box is the sit-down sports bar restaurant. The smaller one is our food court. The areas highlighted in green are our restrooms, and then the grayed out areas are the back of house and support and administrative spaces. There are two main external entrances and one entrance that interfaces directly with the mall to help support their operations there. I apologize that these are in black and white, but these next few shots will give a sense of our interior design and the architectural elements and features. So this is the entrance experience directly coming in from the front entrance, which is our sort of, I call it our security airlock, where we'll have security posted to ID patrons coming in and out of the property. It's a view of our table game pits. Slot floor area. It's a separate view of the area, and this gives a better sense of some of the architectural elements we're looking to include in the ceiling. I know it's not ideal in a black and white sense, but we put significant efforts into creating exciting design elements, dynamic lighting. We engaged Nelson Worldwide, who's a architectural firm that we've worked with in the past at Valley Forge and has significant experience within the casino sector, designing many exciting properties and gaming-related elements. This is an exterior view of the entrance into our sports bar restaurant. You can notice there's a bar that bisects the gaming space to the restaurant space and can serve customers on both ends. This is an interior view of the restaurant, and you can note we'll have extremely large format television screens. It's going to be a great place to watch the game. We have a lot of big sports fans with Penn State, and we're excited to bring this to market. This is a rendering of our quick serve area of our food court. We'll have multiple outlets in there, so if you're looking to get a quick bite, you should stop in. In my over 20 years of working in this industry, I've come to view safety and security as not only operating functions, but as truly a competitive advantage. As such, a brief overview of how we will operate from a safety and security standpoint is, obviously 24/7 coverage with security personnel, fully all-manned entrances. We'll ID all patrons who appear 30 or younger, actually most likely be 35 or younger. And we'll be employing, in addition to visual inspections, the latest ID scanning software and equipment to make sure that everyone who comes into the casino floor is of legal age. Also, 24/7 coverage through surveillance of the casino floor, public spaces, and parking lots, of course. And speaking specifically to parking lot coverage, we'll have regular hourly patrolling coverage, and during peak times, constant coverage of the lots. In terms of employment opportunities, we're projected to have between 350 and 400 permanent full-time equivalency positions once we're open and stabilized. Offering an excellent employee benefits package, including paid time off, 401k, medical, dental, vision insurance, many voluntary benefits to include term life, whole life, accident, critical illness, short-term disability, dynamic career growth opportunities. This is really not just a bullet point for me. I started in this business bussing tables when I was 16 years old. My mother was a cocktail waitress in the casinos. I grew up in a town called Laughlin, Nevada, which is a small gambling town. And whenever at the properties I've worked at, when we do new hire orientation classes, I do my utmost best to attend every one. I think I've only missed a couple in my entire tenure, because one of the things that I love the most about this industry is that the opportunities that it provides for you to start at the bottom and work your way up. I'm an excellent example of that. Many of my peers and colleagues in this industry are. I'm a huge believer in internal development and being able to provide those pathways for people to be able to come in line level positions and work their way up into the executive ranks. I think the casino business is great in that regards because you can come in a sector, maybe you come in environmental services or work on the casino floor or as a cook in food and beverage or something like that. If you have a career path or a desired goal, it's likely we have a position to fit within that field. If you're interested in accounting, we have that. Legal positions. If you're interested in trades, we have electricians, we have carpenters, we have HVAC technicians. If you're interested in computer science or data analysis, we have all of these types of avenues for growth and development. And being able to offer and grow these types of positions is something that I'm very passionate about and love that that's a big part of what my job is. Along with that, we obviously will offer many employee and management training programs to spur on that growth. Obviously, competitive wage packages will be offered, and we'll also have a free table games dealer training when we open up. Our diversity inclusion statements are: we seek to establish a diverse workforce and business partnerships which reflect and represent the surrounding community. We'll focus on creating a working environment with policies, procedures, and systems that support and encourage the principles of diversity and inclusion. We'll build a working environment where everyone is respected and given opportunities to grow and develop. We enhance our surrounding communities through the inclusion and celebration of its diverse cultures and backgrounds. And we will serve our guests, drive results, and create success through embracing our team's diversity of strengths, backgrounds, experiences, and outlooks. I know many of these statements look similar. I know you've seen these. I can tell you what diversity means for me is, in addition to being the right thing to do, it is also, I view it as a competitive advantage. One of the things that I love about this business is that every day when I come into work, I face a new problem. There's a constant stream of new challenges and issues. And what I've found through my career by embracing diversity of inclusion, having a diverse group of people with a diverse background offers solutions to these problems that if we didn't have that, we would not find otherwise. I've experienced this many, many times in my career and have worked for organizations, including MGM Resorts, where this was very highly fostered and encouraged, and we worked a lot on this and saw firsthand how impactful embracing these things are to the bottom line operation of the organization. So it's not only good practice because it's good practice, it's also good practice because it's good business. Our responsible gaming initiatives, all employees are required to complete annual responsible gaming training to work on the casino floor. A responsible gaming executive committee will meet quarterly. And, the responsible gaming phone number, the 1-800-GAMBLER number, and associated messaging, it will be included in all marketing messages, advertising assets, materials, both on and off property. In addition, the responsible gaming pamphlets and support literature will be available at numerous locations around the casino floor, including the casino cage, ATMs, and security stations. I also want to mention our prospective management company, Bally's Corporation. We entered with a framework agreement with Bally's Corp to serve as our prospective management company. Bally's offers a large national network of casino resort properties and a national customer database, including an affiliation with the property on the Las Vegas Strip. They are currently operating 15 casinos in 10 states, and Bally's brings a globally recognized brand to State College. And through their partnership with Sinclair Broadcasting, there's also a national TV presence that is constantly out there and getting the Bally's brand out there. This is something that was very attractive for us. A quick overview of Bally's Corporation and their retail operations. Again, 15 casinos in 10 states. They have over 8,000 employees, 500,000 square feet of gaming space, 15,000 slot machines in their portfolio, 500 table games, 5,300 hotel rooms, 2 horse race tracks, and some highlights of their operating capacities are over 500,000 monthly customers with, as I mentioned before, excellent brand awareness through their media and content partnerships. That's all I have. Thank you. I'm going to hand it over to Mike Fabius.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, ex officio officers. I am Michael Fabius from the law firm Ballard Spahr, representing Mr. Lubert and SC Gaming OpCo. While Eric spoke to the substance and merits of Mr. Lubert's proposed facility, I'm here to briefly address the merits and the authority for Mr. Lubert's application under the unique Category 4 requirements. I plan to move through my slides, my remarks, relatively quickly. As to be candid, there are not a robust category of Category 4 requirements, and they are broadly not in dispute, notwithstanding shifting sands arguments to the contrary that we heard at length last month. In front of you here, to start, Act 23 of 2020 expanded eligibility to bid in the 2020 auction, broader than any prior auction. As you heard Eric said, this resulted in a higher bid, more licensing fee revenue that the Commonwealth would have received if Mr. Lubert had not been made eligible by the expanded eligibility. And to put this in broader context, Act 23 of 2020 was passed just after Mount Airy was refunded 21% of its $21 million revenue, and there were several unsuccessful auctions for Category 4 bids. There were originally 10 Category 4 licenses, but only 5 were originally awarded because of insufficient demand. So the increase, the broadened eligibility was to increase competition, to increase licensing fee revenue. Mr. Lubert, there's no dispute that he's eligible as a bidder. There's no dispute that the location meets the statutory criteria. I'm not going to belabor the location criteria. There's no dispute that Mr. Lubert submitted the highest bid. The winning bidder is required to pay the board the bid amount within 2 business days following the auction. Simply put, there's no restriction in the Gaming Act or the Fiscal Code on the permitted sources of funds Mr. Lubert can use to finance his auction bid or his overall project. As you can see, right in Section 1305C7, the board has discretion to accept any method acceptable to the board for the payment of the winning bid amount. In Section 1313 of the Act, slot machine licensees can have financial backers who are themselves subject to principal licensure. And even in 1305-2C3, there's a recognition that a winning bid could be paid by a third party, such as a letter of credit. In this instance, Mr. Lubert paid the winning bid amount via wire out of his personal bank account. All of Mr. Lubert's sources of funds for his proposed project and the bid payment have been disclosed, detailed, and evidenced during the course of OEC and BIE's investigation. That evidence consists of all the documentation, agreements, applications for the applicable individuals, interviews with the applicable individuals, and sworn affidavits. The winning bidder at each Category 4 auction wins what's called the right to apply, not the license, but the right to apply. Mr. Lubert exercised that right to apply by submitting the application that is now before the board. There's simply no dispute as to that, and there's no dispute that he timely submitted the application now before the board. The only thing that is in dispute is that he submitted that application not in his own personal name, but in the name of SC Gaming OpCo LLC. And there is simply no restriction in the Gaming Act or Fiscal Code that precludes the winning bidder from applying in the name of a wholly owned entity. Naturally, it makes commercial sense to apply for the license through an entity, not through an individual. And to the contrary, there's actual precedent for this. We didn't make this up. This is, you have in front of you the background from 2018, 2019, when Stadium Casino set the precedent, winning the bid and then designating a wholly owned entity as its applicant. So what you have here are 2 Category 4 auctions, 2 Category 4 applications. You have the winning bidder at the top. You have the Category 4 licensee at the bottom, and they are both wholly owned top to bottom. Now, we have provided documentation as to Mr. Lubert's sources of funds. The plan is a mix of personal equity, non-bank debt, bank debt, and operating affiliate fees, which is essentially a payment of the sports wagering licensing fee. Wells Fargo has provided a highly confident letter that it can help finance up to $90 million in debt financing. But regardless of the mix of these 4 sources, Mr. Lubert has provided documentation that he can self-fund the entire budget. And Mr. Lubert and Mr. Pearson have a successful track record in operating casinos, not only in general, but in Pennsylvania with the successful operation of Valley Forge. Well, we've acknowledged and provided documentation and testimony and sworn affidavits to the effect that Mr. Lubert has the ability to convert that non-bank debt into equity in SC Gaming LLC. And he has the ability to take an equity investment from Bally's in SC Gaming Holdco LLC. But to be clear, those are not presently before the board, and they are not springing or automatic. Mr. Lubert today is the 100% owner of SC Gaming LLC. Before that would ever change, we would be back before you with a petition seeking approval to do so under 4 PACS 1328. Unless and until you approve otherwise, Mr. Lubert will be the sole owner of SC Gaming OpCo as he is today. I have here in the slide deck, I'm not going to belabor this. These are slides just to set forth the timeline, Category 4 auction history. These are all matters which the board can take official notice of, and there's a bibliography of your press releases and your records supporting the timeline. This is all just to show the General Assembly's intent in expanding the eligibility to bid to increase competition. And with that, before we take questions, I'll turn this back to Adrian to conclude.
Thanks, Mike. So just want to bring this to a conclusion. As I'm sure you prefer, we're trying to be as efficient as we possibly can. I want to touch on two high-level points as we conclude. First of all, as with every application that has been passed on and approved in this Commonwealth for the last 16 years, this project has been subject to a very comprehensive investigation and report by your team in the Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement and at OEC. As you know, under 4 PACS 1517, A1 and A2, OEC and BAE have the power and the duty to investigate and make recommendations to the board on all matters of eligibility and suitability. And in this case, and I would also just point out, all that is done through a sworn process and under threat of charges of perjury if there is any sort of, obviously, people not representing the facts correctly. In this case, Mr. Lubert, SC Gaming, and every associated applicant have fully cooperated with OEC and BIE's investigation, producing all requested information, including extensive applications, documentation, licensing interviews, and sworn statements. OEC and BIE have conducted a thorough investigation into the eligibility and suitability, including, as we would all expect them to, the assertions that Stadium has made in this process. It has all been thoroughly reviewed and vetted every way possible. Following that, in the suitability report, OEC is of the opinion that the applicant is suitable and eligible to hold a Category 4 slot machine license, obviously if the board were to come to that decision. OEC and BIE recommend that SC Gaming be found suitable and eligible. And as Mike mentioned, FIU, Financial Investigations Unit within BIE, has determined that Mr. Lubert has the ability to self-fund the approximate $128 million project cost of the proposed Category 4 facility. And I would just point out, this is no surprise, because that is what FIU found in 2008, 2009 with the Valley Forge project. I worked very closely with Mr. Lubert on that then, and we have, again, brought evidence of his ability to self-finance before the board and before the team. So that is, a very important point in front of the board in terms of the comprehensive investigation and report that is before you. And then just wrapping up, in terms of high-level eligibility and suitability, we have Category 4 eligibility. We have the right to apply. There's no reasonable dispute about that. With respect to financial suitability and wherewithal, more than adequate financial resources to develop the proposed project. There has been a finding of good character, honesty, integrity, including not only Mr. Lubert, but all of the financial backers. But again, for Mr. Lubert and Mr. Pearson, no surprise there. They've held licenses and have successfully operated a casino in this Commonwealth before. And as you know, Mr. Lubert also has an interest in Rivers Pittsburgh. Getting to operational viability, more than sufficient business ability and experience to create and maintain a successful and efficient operation, and an ability to maintain a steady level and growth of revenue. Again, not only for the two gentlemen here who have a track record in this Commonwealth to do exactly just that, but also bringing in a high-level manager to work with them with respect to Bally's. We have an eligible location, no dispute, with secured land development approvals from College Township. So from the host community, those elected officials have approved the land development plan. And I'll just tick off, all the additional criteria set forth under the Act: location and quality of the proposed facility, the potential for new job creation and economic development. Eric has explained that. Good faith plan to recruit, train, upgrade, diversity and employment and procurement. History and success of the applicant in developing tourism facilities. Again, look at Valley Forge, look at what it was before the amenity was introduced. look at what it has become. And a favorable record in meeting commitments to local agencies and organizations, and a limited need of mitigation of local impacts. And if I could just briefly touch again on sort of local support. I just want to remind the board, again, if we go back to the public impact hearing, there was extensive support that day from the people who came to testify, from local officials at the state level, the local level, business leaders, community members, all the people who took the time to come and actually appear were universally supportive. We certainly are aware that there are people in the State College area who don't support this casino project, but I would submit for the board that the real opposition is they don't like gaming, but respectfully to them, and I will state respectfully, the Commonwealth itself crossed that bridge back in 2004 when the Gaming Act was passed. Most opposition to gaming is based on fears of crime and of underage gaming and responsible gaming not being conducted. But I think the track record of this industry over the last 16 years has demonstrated that it's simply an unfounded concern. This organization, the Game Control Board, with its law enforcement partners and with its operator partners, work extremely hard to ensure that those problems do not arise. You know that, we know that, anybody in the industry knows that. And so while I, again, respect the opinions of people who are opposed to gaming, I would just ask you to recall who came before you to testify and the local support that has been demonstrated most recently less than 30 days ago with the approval of the land development plan. So with that, I'm going to wrap up our presentation. Appreciate the time. I know we'll probably turn it over to OEC, and then we'll be available to answer any questions. If I could, just procedurally, we'll move into the record our presentations. I may as well say it now. Obviously, respectfully, we seek your approval for the issuance of the approval of this license application.
OEC, any objection to the exhibits?
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Ashley Gabriel, Gabrielle. No objection.
Okay. Do you have any questions for SD Gaming?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
May I proceed?
You may proceed, yes.
Thank you. I'd like to turn to the project overview Nittany Mall location slide. That should be around page 8. The project overview, I think this is
Go back one, I think. There we go.
right there. Okay. What is the proximity of the proposed facility to Penn State University?
It's about 3 miles, approximately 3 miles.
Okay. Has anyone associated with SC Gaming OpCo engaged any representatives from Penn State regarding the student body and consequences of underage gambling or on any other topics?
I'm actually on faculty at Penn State as an adjunct instructor. I've had many conversations within the school there. I have not had any structured conversations beyond that, but we have had conversations with them about that.
Okay. Do you anticipate having any further discussions regarding this topic or any other topics? Do you see the need to?
There's nothing scheduled to at present. I know as the project develops, Penn State is a huge member of the community, and we will continue to interface with them and do that. But
we would anticipate that the university would be a good partner, and we have 2 excellent relationships with the university in educating and making sure the student body is aware of the 21 plus, and we won't be shy about using those relationships to make sure the student body is aware.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm referring to the traffic impact study slide. This should be the next slide. Can the surrounding roadway infrastructure support the proposed casino when there is additional traffic during Penn State football season?
Absolutely, yeah. The additional traffic that the casino is projected to generate is far below what the design specs were for the mall when it was originally constructed. And all that did take into account the additional visitation of large events that happen at Penn State.
The next slide. Local impact study. I'm taking a look at the figures here for the estimated calls per month to police, fire, and EMS. How are these figures for these estimated calls per month determined?
So eConsult Solutions, they have done many of these studies for us in the past and for also other Pennsylvania casinos. And they used historical data from like projects throughout the Commonwealth to generate these figures.
Mm-hmm. Should be about 2 slides forward. Economic impact, construction and development.
Okay.
Can you explain the calculations involved in the figures you cite with regard to the upfront positive impacts to the College Township economy, Center County economy, and then also the Pennsylvania economy?
Yes, so, and like how they escalate, is that?
Correct.
Right, so.
And the sources?
Yeah, so it's, the primary impact is, the construction, development itself, and then all of the sourcing and ordering and all the materials that go along with that. So as those circles get larger from College Township proper, we engage with additional firms in Center County and contractors that may be not located within College Township. And then that's why the number gets higher the further out the bubble goes, because of the firms that exist, within Pennsylvania as a whole, don't necessarily exist within Center County. But the focus of the development is to concentrate as much of that economic activity as possible with local and statewide firms and sources.
Interior floor plan layout. This should be about 3 slides forward. You stated that there was one access point to the proposed casino from inside the Nittany Mall. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How many public access points are there to the facility in total?
There are, for customers, there are 3 access points, one access point going into the Nittany Mall and 2 external access points. We also have an access point at the rear, which is employee-focused, but for guests, it's 3.
Okay. Will the public access points have security posted and identification scanning technology?
Yeah, 24 hours a day, yes.
And how many access points are there to the gaming floor itself?
Those 3 points. Yeah, for guests, those same 3.
To the access points to the gaming floor are the same as the access points to the facility? Okay.
Yes.
Are there access points to the restaurant or quick serve food and beverage outlets from outside the casino?
There are none envisioned at this time.
Is there any intention to request board approval for underage access to the restaurant or quick serve food and beverage outlets?
No, not at this time.
Will smoking be permitted at the facility?
We are envisioning to have a non-smoking casino facility.
Okay, security policies and procedures slide. That's around page 23. Oh, that's fine. What public spaces are included in the surveillance 24/7 coverage?
So any circulation space, the casino floor obviously itself, and then any space where customers can go. The nature of the it's relatively small. It's almost all casino floor. So we'll have surveillance coverage in the food and beverage areas, obviously not to the extent we would have in the gaming spaces, but any circulation space or food and beverage areas, the casino floor, and the parking lot. We will not have cameras in the restrooms.
Understandable. What parking lots are included in the surveillance 24/7 coverage?
So there are 2 primary lots on either side of the casino, and those will have, is there an overview if we can run? Yeah. So really on all three sides of that yellow rectangle, we'll have surveillance coverage. The primary main lot of the casino is, directly sort of below, leading out. And then in the rear, that will be not really guest parking, but we'll have coverage of all those lots.
And what parking lots are included in the roving patrol coverage area?
Those same lots.
And then the employment opportunities slide.
Where did I go? Oh, I got to go around the horn.
There you go.
Sorry.
Will there be any part-time employment opportunities available?
Yes, we'll have a mix of full-time and part-time.
And will these part-time positions include any benefits? And if so, what benefits will be included?
There will be, we haven't totally finalized the actual packages, but we will have options for part-time benefits and for part-time employees to participate in the medical, dental, all the voluntary benefits will be open to part-time employees.
Okay. And what do you mean by the provision of free table games dealer training? Does that anticipate a possible dealer school, or would this be more like post-certification training?
It would be both. So pre-opening, we'll operate a dealer school to train all the dealers will come in. We don't, because of where we're located in the state, we're not very nearby other casino properties, so we're not anticipating a large pool of already trained dealers to draw from. So we're going to have to sort of grow our own. And that's what this dealer school is intended to do. But also, we'll maintain the ability to do that to continue to train new dealers, hopefully as internal promotions through the course of operations at the casino.
And then the responsible gaming slide. What specific training programs will employees be required to complete as part of the annual responsible gaming training?
So we partner with, the Council of Compulsive Gambling of Pennsylvania and the Executive Director, Josh Ercole, who I recently just spoke with in terms of my class at Penn State, actually, on some responsible gaming content. So it's all of the standard training that all the other casinos in the state engage with on understanding problem gambling concerns and identifying and how to handle those issues.
Would this include the prevention of the overservice of alcohol to overly intoxicated guests?
Absolutely.
Would this also include training for the prevention of underage gaming?
Absolutely, yeah.
And would this also include training for the prevention of leaving minors unattended?
Absolutely, yeah. That'll be a key focus point that, in addition to those training programs, how we'll address it with signage and other things that, through the board's guidance and the industry response has become commonplace throughout the Commonwealth.
And which groups of employees will receive responsible gaming training?
I believe all employees will receive responsible gaming training.
On all topics?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Mustill, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay. Commissioner Dermody?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one brief question. You mentioned benefits for part-time employees and some voluntary benefits. What's that mean?
So the voluntary benefits like accidental, injury, like the AFLEC stuff.
Okay.
There's disability. So there'll be a suite of benefits that employees can have the choice to opt in or out of outside of the core, like medical, vision, dental.
Are those benefits they would have to pay towards them?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
that's what I was getting at. All right, thank you.
Questions? I do have a question with regard to the local impact study. I know you relied on eConsult, but the numbers of calls for police, fire, and EMS per month is pretty low. gather there's no 24/7 operation in that mall right now, right?
That's correct.
So I can envision that these numbers are going to increase once you're fully operational. How do you plan to address the increase? Are you going to provide your own extra security? Are you partnering with PSP, Penn State? I mean, what are you going to do? Because these numbers are really low. 6 calls a month, 2 calls a month.
Yeah, it's through our research, through my experience operating at Valley Forge and looking at the other communities in the state, the nature of our property, and we think that they're relatively realistic. I will say the most fun part of my job, as I mentioned before, is every day when I come in, we have new problems to deal with. How we dealt with that at Valley Forge is we partnered very closely with the local community, and if the realities change beyond what our expectations are now, we move and adapt. As I said, safety and security is not something that is just an operational checkbox for me and for us. It is a competitive advantage. A safe and secure casino floor is the first thing that we must satisfy if we have any desire to attract gaming customers. That is, one of our top priorities. So if we run into issues that seem to be exceeding there, absolutely, we will pivot and adapt. If that's adding additional staff, we'll do that. If that's working with the local community and local law enforcement to help them augment that, we will absolutely do that. Safety and security. If we can't do those two things, it'll be hard for us to be successful in any other measure.
Okay, thank you. Ex officio, any questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much. We will now hear from Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Thank you. We do have one witness to call, Chair. Christopher
proceed.
Bauer. And OEC would like to call Christopher Bauer to discuss his review of the traffic evaluation associated with SC Gaming OpCo's Category 4 slot machine license application and the proposed facility to be located in State College, PA. The board has previously accepted Mr. Bauer as an expert for the purpose of reviewing traffic impact studies submitted in conjunction with the Category 4 slot machine license applications of Mountain View Thoroughbred Racing Association, LLC, or Hollywood Morgantown, at its licensing hearing held on June 12, 2019, Stadium Casino Westmoreland RE LLC at its licensing hearing held on August 14, 2019, Mountain View Thoroughbred Racing Association LLC or Hollywood York at its licensing hearing held on December 18, 2019, and GW Cumberland OpCo at its licensing hearing held on January 19, 2022. Therefore, barring no objection, OEC requests that the board continue to accept Mr. Bauer as an expert in this regard.
Any objection?
No objection.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Bauer, can you please explain what a traffic...
Can you ask him to spell his name, please? State his name and
Yes.
spell it.
Can you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Christopher K. Bauer, Bauer.
Thank you. Mr. Bauer, can you please explain what a traffic impact assessment and trip generation study is?
Traffic evaluation, traffic impact assessment is the forecasting of traffic conditions that the transportation network and the traveling public is likely to experience as a result of the traffic generated by a proposed development. It's the tool used to determine if improvements to the transportation network are required to mitigate the impact of a development. The trip generation study forecasts the number of trips a development is expected to generate.
Is the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation's Bureau of Maintenance and Operations, or BOMO, responsible for the review and assessment of the traffic impact assessments submitted by applicants for proposed Category 4 casinos in the Commonwealth?
Yes.
And has the BOMO hired your company, McMahon Associates, to review and assess the traffic impact assessments submitted by applicants for proposed Category 4 casinos in the Commonwealth on its behalf?
Yes.
Has your company been retained to review and assess the traffic impact assessment and trip generation study completed by David E. Wooster and Associates, Inc., and dated February 25th, 2021, which was submitted by SC Gaming OpCo for the proposed Category 4 facility to be located in State College, PA?
Yes.
OEC has marked the February 25th, 2021 Traffic Impact Assessment and Trip Generation Study by David E. Wooster and Associates that Mr. Bauer is referring to as OEC Exhibit 1. And OEC's exhibits have been provided to the board prior to this hearing. What is your involvement in the review of this Traffic Impact Assessment and Trip Generation Study?
Review and oversight of the review.
What methodology did you use for your review?
Industry and PennDOT standards for the review of traffic impact assessments.
At any time during your review and assessment of the information, did anyone attempt to influence or coerce you to provide a favorable or unfavorable review?
No.
Are you aware of any attempt to influence or coerce McMahon Associates during the course of its review?
No.
Is McMahon satisfied with the scope of the assessment provided by David E. Wooster and Associates, Inc.?
Yes.
Did Wooster's evaluation recommend any improvements to the study area identified in the evaluation?
No.
Did McMahon respond to Wooster's traffic impact assessment and trip generation study, and were any comments offered?
Yes, the review of the submission generated 11 comments. The most important comment was the main topic of trip generation. Trip generation is the number of vehicles that the development will likely see use the facility, and therefore the driveway serving the facility. The submission relied on older data derived from casinos with different operating parameters than the Category 4 licenses. It was requested that the applicant collect data at the Category 4 licenses that were casinos that were in operation at the time to determine a more representative trip generation.
And were these comments stated in a letter and provided to Wooster and Associates?
Yes.
OEC has marked the letter dated April 7th, 2022 from McMahon Associates that Mr. Bauer is referring to as OEC Exhibit 2. Did Wooster respond to this correspondence, and how were your comments addressed?
Yes. The response to conduct a trip generation study was completed. As a result of the study, our other technical comments were addressed.
And OEC has marked the July 18th, 2022 response letter by Wooster that Mr. Bauer referred to as OEC Exhibit 3. And did McMahon respond to this correspondence from Wooster?
Yes, the letter generated 3 comments, one concurring with the trip generation study and 2 comments regarding a post-development study.
And OEC has marked this letter from McMahon Associates, Inc., dated July 28th, 2022, that Mr. Bauer is referring to as OEC Exhibit 4. Can you summarize your response and findings as provided in detail in your July 28th, 2022 letter?
Sure. The trip generation study included the collection of data at 3 Category 4 casinos that were in operation at the time. These included Hollywood York Casino, Hollywood Morgantown Casino, and Live Casino Pittsburgh. The study indicated that the trip generation of the Category 4 casino would be less than the trip generation of the Nittany Mall when it was at full capacity. Since the access configuration and the infrastructure in its place to support the mall is fully operational, it can be concluded that the site infrastructure as currently designed is adequate to support the Category 4 casino, and no improvements are warranted or recommended. PennDOT did have some concerns about the transportation network surrounding the casino location. The traffic volumes utilized in the mall have been reduced over the years. There are concerns that signal timing and storage lane links at the driveways and intersections of SR 150 with SR 26 and Shiloh Row may be inadequate to accommodate the traffic utilizing the site. It was recommended that a post-development study to be conducted a year after opening of the casino.
And does McMahon agree with the study's conclusion?
Yes, with the caveat that the post-development study be conducted to ensure that the signal timing and storage lane links at the driveways and intersections are adequate to accommodate the forecasted casino traffic.
Does McMahon have any recommendations for the applicant following its review of the traffic evaluation and subsequent submissions by Wooster?
Yes, only to conduct the post-development study.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer. Chair, I have no further questions.
Any questions from SC Gaming?
No questions. Just want to confirm what Mr. Pearson had already testified to, that we've agreed and will conduct the post-development survey and obviously take into account any recommendations.
Any objection to the exhibits of OEC?
No objection.
Those
I would like to move those exhibits 1 through 4 into the record, please.
So moved. Any questions or comments for OEC from the board? Commissioner Mustio, any questions for OEC?
No questions. No questions, Chair.
Ex officio, any questions? Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Stadium Casino,
Madam Chair,
yes.
if I may, we do not have any further evidence to present, but I did like to make a statement, if I may, in closing.
Okay.
Thank you. Before the board this morning is the consideration of SC Gaming OpCo's Category 4 slot machine license application. According to the Pennsylvania Racehorse Development and Gaming Act and the board's regulations promulgated thereunder, the board shall have the specific power and duty at its discretion to issue slot machine licenses. The board shall not grant a slot machine license unless the board finds that the applicant satisfies the eligibility and suitability requirements of the act and the board's regulations. An applicant for a slot machine license shall appear before the board and at all times have the burden to establish and demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence its eligibility and suitability for licensure. Category 2 slot machine licensee, Stadium Casino RE LLC, has raised concerns regarding the board's statutory authority to consider the Category 4 slot machine license application of SC Gaming OpCo based on its various allegations of improper ownership interests and funding in and organizational structures of SC Gaming OpCo. According to the Act and the board's regulations, the Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement, or BIE, shall investigate and review all applicants and applications for a license. OEC shall advise the BIE on all matters, including the granting of licenses, the conduct of background investigations, and the investigation of potential violations of the Act. Pursuant to this mandate, the BIE has conducted a background investigation of SC Gaming OpCo, its proposed management company, associated affiliates, principal entities, and principals, which was guided and advised by OEC. Further, the BIE's Financial Investigations Unit, or FIU, also conducted an investigation into the financial fitness of the applicant, which was also guided and advised by OEC. The members of OEC and BIE staff who performed work on the investigations associated with this applicant have a combined 127 years of gaming experience through employment with the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board and other gaming regulatory jurisdictions. Since their inception, OEC and BIE have analyzed thousands of business transactions involving formation, restructuring, reorganization, bankruptcy, financing, mergers, and acquisitions, just to name a few examples, as one of its many duties under the Act. The FIU, which is responsible for conducting the financial investigations associated with this applicant, has nearly 100 years of experience in professional accounting and finance, to include public accounting and corporate finance experience. FIU staff have received Bachelor of Science degrees in accounting, with one member having a master's degree in taxation. The entire FIU team is licensed as certified public accountants and complete the yearly continuing education requirements to maintain licensure in the Commonwealth. Staff members also hold the following credentials or certifications: Certified Fraud Examiner, Certified in Financial Forensics, Chartered Global Management Accountant, Certified Information Technology Professional, and Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialist. In their careers, the FIU team has performed audits, tax return preparation, litigation support, forensic accounting, business valuations, corporate analytics, corporate forecasting, and budgeting. The FIU team has drafted hundreds of reports on various topics, including corporate restructuring involving complex financial matters, financial suitability, mergers and acquisitions, and capital financing structuring on all types of entities, including but not limited to corporations, partnerships, and limited liability companies for the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. The BIE, FIU, and OEC have paid particular attention to the issues raised by Stadium throughout the background investigation process. BIE, FIU, and OEC must rely on the provisions of the Act and Board's regulations in the conduct of and advising on the background investigations. BIE, FIU, and OEC specifically investigated the applicant's eligibility for a Category 4 slot machine license and compliance with the provisions of the Act and the regulations corresponding to the issues raised by Stadium. In summary, the Act requires each applicant for a slot machine license to produce the information, documentation, and assurances concerning financial background and resources as the Board deems necessary to establish by clear and convincing evidence the financial stability, integrity, and responsibility of the applicant. Each applicant shall in writing authorize the examination of all bank accounts and records as may be deemed necessary by the board. This includes a review of bank references, business and personal income and disbursement schedules, tax returns, and other reports filed with governmental agencies, business and personal accounting and check records and ledgers, and a review of all financial backers and all lenders either in effect or proposed. The integrity of the financial sources shall be judged upon the same standards as the applicant, and any such person or entity shall produce for the board, upon request, any document or information which bears any relation to the application. Additionally, any agreement to conduct business between a person and a slot machine licensee is required to be produced and is subject to the approval of the board in accordance with rules and regulations promulgated by the board. BIE's background investigation included a comprehensive review of this information. According to the Act and the Board's regulations, OEC shall review all information discovered during an investigation relating to an applicant's suitability and eligibility for a license and in accordance with law, independently determine the content and scope of that information and prepare a final background investigation report for inclusion in a final report to the Board relating to an applicant's suitability and eligibility for a license. In contrast, OEC is also vested with the authority to make objections to the Board relating to the issuance of licenses on behalf of the BIE, which may prevent the Board from considering an applicant's full application for licensure at all, when such applications are denied or withdrawn with prejudice prior to receiving full consideration due to unsuitable activity. Such instances have resulted when OEC demonstrates the ineligibility of an applicant or the unsuitability of the applicant through the Board's hearing process. In this instance, OEC, on behalf of the BIE, prepared a final background investigation report for inclusion in the final report relating to SC Gaming OpCo's eligibility and suitability for a Category 4 slot machine license for the Board's review and consideration. The information in OEC's background investigation reports is reflective of the information found through BIE's exhaustive and detailed background investigations. FIU completed a report of this investigation and a supplemental report addressing the applicant's financial fitness, which are attached as exhibits to the background investigation reports drafted by OEC. After review of the applications and background investigations of SC Gaming OpCo, its affiliated entities, and its principal license applicants, and an analysis of the submissions and investigations comparatively with the eligibility and suitability requirements of the Act and the Board's regulations as applied to each license, OEC is of the opinion that SC Gaming OpCo is eligible and suitable for the issuance of a Category 4 slot machine license at this time. As such, OEC is of the opinion that the Board has the authority and duty to consider this application as it does any other application that is ripe for consideration. If the Board decides to award the Category 4 slot machine license to SC Gaming OpCo, OEC requests that the Board implement the special condition addressed during Mr. Bauer's testimony today and as provided in the SC Gaming OpCo background investigation report regarding a post-development traffic study to occur 1 year after the opening date of the facility. Thank you, and OEC is available for any questions you may have.
Any questions or comments for OEC, again, based on the final statement? No. Okay, thank you very much. Stadium Casino, as the Board has granted you an intervention in this matter, now is your opportunity to address the Board. You will have 15 minutes. Mr. Aronchek, there will be a yellow light when you're 1 minute short of 15 minutes, and then a red light when your time is over. And just also for the record, after Stadium's argument, SC Gaming and OEC will have a brief opportunity to address their argument. So, Mr. Aronchek.
My name is Mark Aronchik, Aronchick. I'm here for Stadium, and with me is Jason Levine, Levine. Honorable Board, in the very brief time you've given me to address very important issues, I will have to go right to one core issue that was just addressed by OEC, and that is one of the reasons why they have said repeatedly, you do not have to hear from us. You don't have to hear our evidence. You don't have to provide discovery, is that they will address eligibility in their report. They're the ones to address eligibility. There's two fundamental problems going down that road. First of all, the question we raise is much more fundamental than eligibility. It goes to the core of whether or not you have the statutory authority to even consider this particular application for a license, and you don't. And the second is eligibility is being stretched beyond what the statute actually says eligibility is in 1305.1A, 1724 EE4, PA Code 421A1, and many other provisions. Eligibility is about good standing, about character, location, diversity, and the like. That's not why we're here. We're here because of a very narrow issue, but an important fundamental issue, and that is, do you have the statutory authority that the General Assembly say that you can consider this particular application the way it's structured? And the answer, we've briefed and I will try to address quickly, is the answer is no. Agencies do not have unilateral, unreviewable power to define their own jurisdiction, and OEC under the statutes hasn't been given the obligation or the responsibility to address your statutory authorization. That is something that is done in hearings with evidence, adversarial process. Nobody on that you've heard from is going to address or challenge your statutory authority. They've all said, and OEC has said in their briefs and in their answer, they're not going to challenge your authority. Mr. Lupert certainly isn't. He's not going to challenge it. And your own counsel a year and a little bit more than a year ago in Commonwealth Court, before all this record, before anything we've seen today, just said, we're not going to challenge statutory authority. We are the only people that can challenge the statutory authority, and you have tied our hands. You are not permitting us to do it in the proper way, and that is not right. Why don't you have the statutory authority? We've heard from SC Gaming that this Category 4 particular mini casino license, the General Assembly expanded eligibility. They expanded the concept of who could bid and who could apply. In some degree, that is true, but they did not expand it to the level that you have before you in this presentation. They said specifically, it's in the legislative intent, it's in the history, it's in the statute itself, that this particular license goes to existing casinos or people with individuals with an interest in existing operations. In a sense, keep this in-house among the people already in Pennsylvania. That's what they said. That is the expansion, so you will, so to speak, that Mr. Lupert can come in now with an interest in Rivers Casino, and he can bid and he can apply. But what he did, and there are red flags galore all over this place, is not what the General Assembly created. It is not what your authorization is. He has gone out and assembled a collection of entities and individuals and parceled out ownership interests, direct and indirect, with people who are not licensed in Pennsylvania, are not part of the process. And let's just go over some of the red flags. There are so many that respectfully mandated an actual adversarial hearing. We heard with a hand wave that Bally's, Bally's has some kind of conditional or contingent or future right to become an equity member in SC Gaming and the family of companies. Well, Bally's in their 8K doesn't say that it's some kind of future right. They say they will maintain a majority equity interest in this project. That's what they told the public in their Securities Act filing. That's what they will maintain, a majority equity interest. Now, we asked, okay, let's look at this. Let's see what it is that we're talking about. Let's discover what it is. What's the transaction? What's the documents? Let's put it under a microscope. Let's have people testify as to whether that's an ownership, direct or indirect interest. No, we're prevented from doing that. We just have to accept the fact without any analysis about what is Bally's right, and then apply the legal standards, your own, in your own regulations. At 58 PA Code 433A3 and A4, you say that indirect ownership interests matter. It's not just direct, indirect. Indirect ownership includes conditional interests, options, warrants, springing interests, all kinds of conditions where someone has the right to future ownership. That needs to be put under a microscope because, and the same with all of the other red flags we raised. Another example, in their own application, they say they're only going to answer questions with respect to it and not principals, affiliates, intermediaries, subsidiaries, holding companies. They're going to submit their own applications and say what their interests are. When they're asked about successors, they say, well, none other than transactions Mr. Lupert entered into before he applied, none other than these transactions before he applied with other entities or individuals. That means there are other transactions, and they've conveyed interests. And you can't just sweep away and say, well, it's a conditional interest because someday they have to get your approval. That's not the answer. If they have a legal right, a conditional right, a warrant, an option, a springing interest, any sort of kind of indirect ownership interest, that needs to be examined. Step back for a second. Do you think the General Assembly, when they enacted the statute for this particular one mini casino to existing casino operations or folks with an interest, in Mr. Lupert's case in Rivers, in Pittsburgh, do you think they said, well, what we're really doing here is we're creating a Trojan horse for Mr. Lupert to take his one interest and then go out and parcel out ownership interests, direct or indirect. And we're going to bring in Bally's, and we're going to bring in other individuals, none of whom are licensed. Do you actually think that's what the General Assembly intended here? There is no possible way they intended that because they say they didn't in their legislative history and in the text of the statute. Now, in addition, there are other interests that we know that exist. Mr. Cordish, who you know, has submitted a verified statement of what he was told by Mr. Sokolov and Mr. Poole. None of that was even discussed today. None of that was even addressed. The point about your authority is you can't sit here and decide. The General Assembly said we have to be, we can give a license for a specific reason on specific basis, but we're going to look at clever statements in the application, clever ideas like Mr. Lupert saying, I have the net ownership interest in SE Gaming, the net, because I have the common stock. And the OEC coming along in a brief that they filed and said, net means we're not listing indirect interests like convertible interests, options, warrants. We're not going to list them. Well, that could be okay if that's what they want to do, and that's how they want to defend this act. But I contend they had to be listed, and we had to have the right to see them. And we had to have the right to tell you why that is an improper expansion of what the General Assembly allowed. Now, they say, oh, Stadium, did the same thing in the past. They do a hand wave that this is what Stadium did. We don't even have the opportunity to present evidence to show no. We put in our petition a response to that. That's been their mantra since the first letter I wrote 2 years ago almost. Explain why you're even going forward, board, board, in handling this application. Explain that. Their mantra is, well, Stadium did the same thing. That's not true. We have addressed it in our petition that it's not true. But if you are interested in that, if that even matters, we should have had a hearing about that where we could show you that it's no bearing, has no relationship to what Mr. Lupert has done here right now. No bearing. Now, that gets me to the sort of basic point about these whole proceedings. I don't understand, I don't think I ever will, why it is that there has been so much effort to prevent an actual hearing on this subject when you know that in Sugar House, where a different earlier board did the same thing with regard to the study of a financial interest, not indirect ownership interest, and then they were reversed by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, sent back to have an actual hearing, adversarial with cross-examination and the like. That's what happened there. We have said when I appeared before you last, why make the same mistake? Why do that all over again? And instead, what we've gotten from you is you denied party status. They say, oh, sour grapes. Not sour grapes. We have a statutory right that the General Assembly gave us as the second bidder to challenge what happened with the first bid. That's a statutory right. It's not sour grapes. The General Assembly wants people in our position to make those challenges. They built it into the statute because from that either becomes an award to us or another auction. We're denied party status. When others in the past have, the board itself in briefs have said intervention can be party status. Then we're denied discovery over an attenuated claim of confidentiality that falls apart under analysis. They can stand here today and tell you about the Bally's contract and what it means and what it is. And we have to sit there not knowing what they're talking about. They've addressed it publicly, but somehow it's now confidential to look at. These transaction documents that Mr. Lubert entered into are not confidential. That's not what the list of confidentiality says in your regulations and in the statute. And that could have been worked out and that could have been managed. We're not looking for all these reports that BIE and all the other things you heard today. You're not even waiting for the Commonwealth Court to rule. They have pending before them our challenge where there would be a proper proceeding, adversarial, on this fundamental question, which it's so fundamental. I mean, we all know that agencies cannot exceed their authority. You're a product of the General Assembly. You denied our motion the other day to submit an expert report because it was not timely, that which would have addressed to you what is clear anyway, and evident that there is a variety of ways to structure projects that amount to indirect ownership interests, akin to ownership interests, and the need to examine. And you said, well, it's not timely. You gave notice of this hearing about 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. We didn't know there was going to be a hearing today until 2 weeks ago. And then we got together this expert report and we submitted on Monday, where the other day you gave notice that if you have graphics and evidence and other things you want to put on electronically with PowerPoint, submit it on Monday. It became moved into evidence. Everything was submitted on Monday was moved into evidence today. We submit the expert report on Monday and it's not timely. That's not fair. That's not right. And you could easily have managed a response, give them another day or two to respond to it if that was really the issue. That's just not right. 15 minutes to address these fundamental questions, a limited amount of time to address these fundamental questions where all the essential facts are kept from us, where I have to go and argue about red flags that exist. No opinion explaining any of your rulings, no written opinion explaining to us or to the public all of these rulings. And you know something, all in a proceeding where everyone else here has the information, the basic information that we've sought, except us. Now, there's a fundamental truth here. In all of the briefing before you, no one has addressed in any reasoned, developed manner the legal basis for your statutory authority. They just say, well, it's eligibility. It's different. It's not eligibility. It's a different concept. And no analysis of the facts. No one. Instead, a lot of diversionary arguments about what Stadium did without a hearing on what Stadium really did, about exhaustion, about discretion, about confidentiality, about everything other than the fundamental question. You don't have that discretion to decide your own jurisdiction unilaterally or in a setting like this. Respectfully, you do not. It is an abuse of, I'm finishing, it is an abuse of discretion, a gross abuse. It violates our statutory rights, it violates due process, it's unprecedented, and it's not what the General Assembly intended. Thank you for the limited opportunity, at least, to address you today.
Thank you, Mr. Aronchek. SC Gaming, would you like to respond? And you will have no more than 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Stephen Kastenberg, Kastenberg, and I apologize that I have a hard candy, but as you can hear, my voice and throat are a little stressed today. I want to make a few basic points here to the board. First, although my colleague has been fond of repeating today and last month that this is a jurisdictional and a statutory authority question for the board. And I think much of the argument we heard today was sort of in the nature of a motion for reconsideration of what we already argued a month ago. The fact is that the statutory authority of this board is established by 441A.7D of Chapter 58, and that's to regulate the conduct of gaming and related activities. And you also have the statutory authority to consider, deny, and approve licenses. That's your statutory authority. And under that's 1202B12. And the fact is that as part of deciding the eligibility, as part of deciding to approve a license, you do look at eligibility and you do look at suitability. And according to the statutory scheme, eligibility includes the requirement that the applicant be in compliance with the Gaming Act. So all of the things that my colleague says are challenges to your statutory authority are, in fact, exactly what you should be doing foursquare as part of your determination of eligibility. It is not some unique animal out there. It's simply, the heart of what you do. The fact is that intervention is also governed by the code, as we discussed a month ago, and you only allow a petitioner to present evidence when they would have something unique to bring to develop the evidentiary record. That has not ever been argued here. This is all information that has been subject to the exhaustive assessment of BIE and OEC, who explicitly advised the board today that they reviewed and considered and addressed the concerns that were aired by the petitioner. Appropriately aired in a written statement as they're supposed to do. So I think that there is nothing that's an affront to discretion or an affront to statutory authority here. The BIE and OEC has done their job. They've reviewed much more exhaustion than a petitioner could. The financial aspects of this and ownership aspects. The fact is that financial backers, management companies, these are all, ordinary course of dealing approved by the regulations that have been done many, many times by applicants, stadium included, but not just stadium. And there's nothing sort of unusual about this. And we agree that BIE and OEC's assessment and report address these issues and agree with the recommendation. The only other thing I would say is about the expert report. We certainly agree with the decision of the board not to consider it, besides the timeliness question, which of course Stadium has been a petitioner for many months and had applied to be a petitioner for even longer, is the fact that the expert report doesn't even add anything. As my colleague said, all it does is state some general platitudes about a business organization and then go on to say that the so-called expert, an attorney in gaming, could not offer a specific opinion. So even beyond the fact of the lateness, it is not, in our view, a subject worth consideration as an expert report. Thank you very much for your consideration. Do you have anything further, Mike, to add?
No, we'll revert the rest of our time.
And Mr. Kastenberg, did you state and spell your name for the
I
record?
did.
Okay.
Thank you. I learned my lesson.
We
I
gave
blanked
the
on
court
that.
reporter the spelling of all of our people before the hearing. We try to make it as easy as we can for the court reporter.
Okay. OEC, would you like to respond to Stadium?
Cyrus Petrie, P-I-T-R-E, Chief Enforcement Counsel. Very, very brief, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
The authority is in the Act. The Act is replete with the authority of this board. So as far as I'm concerned, that argument goes out the window. Everything submitted by Mr. Lubert as an applicant is similar to just about every other application that we've received for Category 1, 2, 3, 4 license. His application is no different from Stadium's application or any other applicant that came before us in general. There is nothing unsuitable about the application. There is nothing unsuitable about the integrity of the funds, the source of the funds, the source of the bid. All of that has been investigated and is of a suitable nature. The only difference in Mr. Lubert's application than any other application, and well, not any other application, because we did have an application where an individual applied through an LLC, is that we have a slot machine licensee that bid and a principal licensee that bid. That is the only difference in these applications, okay? The financial sources, the agreements, they all differ, they're all complex, but they're all of the same nature. They all come from legitimate sources of funding under the Act, whether it's the bid or whether it's the proposed financing or the financial backers or any management agreement. And the final thing is that any future ownership cannot occur unless a petition is filed with this board and this board approves that petition. Anything else jeopardizes the application, it jeopardizes the license, and believe me, I will be the first person to take an action to ensure that that application or that license is revoked or denied or whatever action is necessary if there's any other hidden ownership in this application or any application or licensing. So with that, I just want to assure the board that you do have the authority and that I request that you move forward in your consideration of this application. Thank you.
Your
Thank
Honors,
you.
can I have 45 seconds to address
Only
2 points?
45.
Only 45. Number one, your authority derives from Section 1305.2 C10, which the legislature has specifically said is the limit of your authority to consider this particular application. And if Mr. Lupert in substance did not apply, and we contend that he did not because of these indirect ownership interests, these other transactions, you have a mandatory directive to rebid. That's where your statutory authority lies. Number two, this notion that the expert report wouldn't add anything, I don't know where that comes from. Our petition that accompanied it, if you would read it again, you would see, does not say that at all. It would have added a great deal to this particular proceeding. That's it. Thank you. Your Honor.
Thank you. We will now go into executive session. We will resume probably 11:55, maybe 12, somewhere between that. So don't go far. Thank you.
It'd be a good idea for them to engage early.
Okay, we are back on the record. We will now proceed with the remainder of the public board meeting. Our first order of regular business this afternoon is consideration of a motion to approve the board meeting transcript and minutes. May I have a motion to approve the transcript and minutes of the board's October 19th, 2022 meeting?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board approve the minutes and transcript of October 19th, 2022 meeting.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted. We will now hear from Executive Director Kevin O'Toole.
Good morning, Chair Smiler.
Afternoon,
Members
Kevin.
of the board. Good afternoon instead of good morning. Okay, that's fine. This morning, I would like to report that on Monday and Tuesday of this week, board staff oversaw a 2-day test period in preparation for the opening of the Category 4 mini casino at Parks Casino Shippensburg. This casino facility will be the 17th land-based casino in the Commonwealth. And it consists of 73,000 square feet of gaming space with 500 slot machines, 48 electronic table game terminals, and a retail sports book. Director Chris Schroeder of our Bureau of Casino Compliance has led our team in the preparation for this opening. The observations made during the 2 test dates by our staff and following discussions being held today, the board will ensure that all aspects of the casino opening will meet operational requirements pursuant to the Pennsylvania Racehorse Development and Gaming Act. On another note, since this is the January meeting, I tend to like to talk about the performance of the casino industry during the previous calendar year, and it's usually a very good story, and this year is certainly no exception. Our Office of Communications issued 2 press releases last week that summarized the gaming performance of the land-based casinos, along with those gambling initiatives that were adopted by the legislature via Act 42 of 2017. The online gaming operations, the sports wagering operations, the VGT truck stop operators, and the fantasy sports contest operators. And those 2 press releases consisted of one summarizing the month of December 2022 and the other for the full calendar year. With respect to the month of December 2022, it was an exceptional month, ending with over $472 million in total gaming revenue from all sources regulated by the board. This was the largest revenue production for a single month to date. With respect to the full calendar year of 2022,
$172,000. We are on target for the year, and expenditures are in line with expectations, totaling 44% of the total appropriation through the first half. 90% or $19.1 million of board expenses to date have been for payroll, with the remaining 10% or $2.1 million for the operating and fixed asset sides of the budget. Overall expenditures for the first half of the fiscal year are up $1.3 million from the same period last fiscal year. This is primarily due to increases on the payroll side, due to new casino openings and an increase in the personnel complement to meet the demands of gaming expansion. Payroll expenses are $19.1 million. Payroll expenses of $19.1 million are up $1.2 million or 6.6% from the same period last year, and include $11.7 million for salaries and leave payouts and $7.4 million for benefits. Benefits as a percentage of salaries are 62% of salary costs. Operating and fixed asset expenses total $2.1 million, essentially unchanged from the same period last fiscal year. And the primary expenses in this category are $722,000 for real estate rentals and leases, and $605,000 for services, which are primarily interagency billings for services that the board receives from other state agencies. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Dave? Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you.
We'll now hear from Danette Bixler-George, Human Resources Director. Danette?
Danette Bixler-George, DANETTEBIXLER-GEORGE. Good afternoon, Chair, board members. The Office of Human Resources has one motion for your consideration today relative to the hiring of 6 individuals. All of these individuals have completed the background investigation and drug screening process. Excuse me. The following 3 individuals are recommended for hire by Christopher Schroeder, Director of Casino Compliance. Elizabeth Stipich as a Casino Compliance Representative at Live Philadelphia Casino. Edward Chison as a Casino Compliance Representative at Live Philadelphia Casino. Chase Blythe as a Casino Compliance Representative at Rivers Pittsburgh Casino. The following 2 individuals are recommended for hire by Heather Warner, Director of Gaming Laboratory Operations. Dean Pandelaris as a statistician and Ryan Jordan as a statistician. The final individual recommended for hire is by Paul Morrow, Director of Investigations and Enforcement. It is Tyler Bobowitz as a specialized investigator in the Specialized Investigations section. Unless you have questions, I ask that the board consider a motion to approve the hiring actions as indicated.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the applicants for hire as proposed by the Human Resources Director.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danette. Okay, next up is Office of Chief Counsel.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Today, the board has 6 petitions before it for consideration. The petitions will be decided on the documentary of record by agreement of the parties. In each of these matters, the board has, received all of the documents filed of record prior to today's meeting, in advance of today's meeting. The first of these petitions pertains to GW Cumberland OpCo's request for approval of a corporate overhead and shared services agreement with Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment, Inc. By way of background, on January 19th, 2022, GW Cumberland OpCo was awarded a Category 4 slot machine license and does business as Parks Casino Shippensburg. Parks Casino Shippensburg is scheduled to open in February 2023, and as Kevin just alluded to, they just had their test nights. Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment, Inc., on the other hand, holds a Category 1 slot machine license and owns and operates the Parks Casino in Bensalem. The corporate overhead and shared services agreement between GW Cumberland OpCo and Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment, Inc. will allow Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment to provide services to GW Cumberland OpCo in connection with the operation and management of its Category 4 facility, specifically providing for administrative, corporate, managerial, and operational support for GW Cumberland. The corporate overhead and shared services assessment would run through December 31st, 2023, and then could automatically renew annually thereafter. The Office of Enforcement Counsel and BIE have reviewed this agreement, and they have no objection to the relief requested, subject to conditions outlined in their answer, which primarily guarantee the appropriate licensure of the parties that will be involved in this agreement. OEC also has no objection to the petitioner's request for confidentiality, and OEC, in fact, has requested confidentiality of certain of the information it has also provided of record, and this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board grant GW Cumberland OpCo's petition for approval of corporate overhead and shared services agreement as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, subject to the conditions that will be outlined in the board's order. I further move that the parties' request for confidentiality be granted.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The next petition before the board today is Mount Airy No. 1 LLC's petition to amend 2 trusts that have an ownership interest in the licensee. Mount Airy No. 1 LLC is the holder of a Category 2 slot machine license and operates the Mount Airy Casino Resort. Mount Airy is wholly owned subsidiary of Mount Airy Holdco LLC and the ownership of Holdco is vested in 7 trusts. Nicola DeNaples is the beneficiary of both the Grantor Trust 2 of Lisa DeNaples and the Grantor Trust 2 for the benefit of the children of Nicholas DeNaples. And based upon his status as a beneficiary of these 2 trusts, Nicola is a beneficial owner of Mount Airy and is therefore licensed as a principal. In May of 2022, Mount Airy filed a petition requesting permission to amend the trust to remove Nicola as a beneficiary. The board granted that request with a condition requiring Mount Airy to file separate petitions seeking approval of the amended trust documents. Mount Airy filed that specific request in October 2022. The only change to the trusts is the removal of Nicola as beneficiary, which will reallocate his interests to the remaining beneficiaries. OEC has no objection to the requested relief, subject to conditions outlined in its answer, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board grant Mount Airy LLC's petition to approve the proposed amendments to the Grantor Trust to children of Nicholas DeNaples and the Grant Trust 2 of Lisa DeNaples as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, subject to the conditions that will be outlined in the board's order.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
I like the Chief Justice reference.
All opposed? Got a little promotion there.
The motion is adopted.
Next is another petition from Mount Airy No. 1 LLC requesting an amendment to the to other Grantor trusts. As mentioned previously, Category 2 slot machine licensee Mount Airy is wholly owned by Mount Airy Holdco LLC, whose ownership interest is vested in 7 trusts. Julian DeNaples is the beneficiary of both the Grantor Trust for the benefit of the children of Margaret Mary Glodzik and the Grantor Trust 2 of Lisa DeNaples. Based on his beneficiary status, Julian has a beneficial interest in Mount Airy and is licensed by the board as a principal. Similar to the previous matter, Mount Airy seeks to remove Julian as a beneficiary under the trusts, and as a result, the implicated trusts have to be amended. Mount Airy seeks approval of those amended trusts. OEC has no objection to the request, subject to the conditions outlined in their answer, and additionally, OEC has no objection to requests for confidentiality relative to the trust documents, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant Mount Airy No. 1 LLC's petition requesting leave from the board to amend and approve the amendments to the Grantor Trust 2 of Lisa DeNaples and the Grantor Trust 2 for the benefit of children of Margaret Mary Glodzik DeNaples, as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, subject to the conditions that will be outlined in the board's order. I further move that the petitioner's request for confidentiality be granted.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Next before the board is the Office of Enforcement Counsel's request for reconsideration of the board's December 14th, 2022 order, which granted Sports Information Services Limited's request to surrender the principal license of Veralda AB. By way of background, on October 28th, 2022, Sports Information Services Limited, doing business as Canby, filed a petition to surrender the principal license of Veralda AB. Veralda AB served as a mechanism by which Anders Strom held interest in Canby. The petition to surrender stated that his interest, that is Mr. Strom's interest, was transferred into a new entity and that Veralda AB was dissolved in September of 2022. OEC's answer to this petition was initially due on November 28th, 2022. However, the board's Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement initiated a full investigation into this matter, and therefore OEC requested an extension to file an answer as they needed to review the results of BIA's investigation prior to filing an informed answer. However, due to administrative error caused by an automated system, the petition was prematurely placed before the board and granted on December 14th, 2022. The request before the board today is to vacate that December 14th order and remand the matter back to the Office of Hearings and Appeals so as to allow both BIE and OEC time to complete the investigation and to file an informed answer. This request is consistent with the board's regulations addressing reconsideration of orders if that request is filed within 15 days of the order being issued, which is true in this case. And this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant the Office of Enforcement Counsel's motion for reconsideration of the board's December 14th, 2022 order granting the surrender of Veralda AB's principal affiliate license as described by the Office of Chief Counsel. This matter shall be remanded to the Office of Hearings and Appeals for further proceedings.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The next petition before the board is Raymond Maxwell's request for permission to make early reapplication for a credential to the board, or from the board. On January 18th, 2018, Mr. Maxwell applied for a gaming employee occupation permit. Thereafter, on May 15th, 2018, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a recommendation of denial, recommending that Mr. Maxwell's application be denied for his failure to disclose his criminal history, failure to amend his application, consistent with reporting his criminal history, and failure to cooperate in his investigation. Specifically, Mr. Maxwell failed to disclose a 2012 arrest for possession of marijuana. The board granted OEC's request and issued an order on July 10th, 2019, denying Mr. Maxwell's application. On November 15th, 2022, Mr. Maxwell filed a petition seeking permission to reapply for a gaming employee occupation permit. Mr. Maxwell included with his petition a certification explaining the facts surrounding the denial of his application, acknowledging that he was given ample time to amend his application and failed to do so due to his lack of his understanding of the investigative and suitability process. He further stated that he has now been approved in other states to serve as a slot technician, and if given the opportunity, would like to apply to such positions in the Commonwealth. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to Mr. Maxwell's request, and the matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant Raymond Maxwell's petition for early reapplication of his gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The final petition before the board today is Melvin Meyer's request for removal from the involuntary exclusion list. By way of background, on October 30th, 2016, Mr. Meyer struck a table games dealer at Mohegan Sun. He was charged and pled guilty with harassment, and consequently, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Mr. Meyer on the exclusion list, which the board granted on April 5th, 2017. 5 years later, on April 22nd, 2022, Mr. Meyer attempted to enter Mohegan Sun, was informed that he remained on the excluded persons list, was denied entry, and was charged with defiant trespass. He later pled guilty and paid all fines associated with that charge. Consistent with the board's regulations, more than 5 years after being placed on the list, later in October of 2022, Mr. Meyer filed a request to be removed from the list. OEC, after reviewing the request and Mr. Meyer's history, does not object to that request, and the matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board grant Melvin Meyer's request for removal from the involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Regan, seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Next, presenting reports and recommendations as well as withdrawals and surrenders is Deputy Chief Counsel Chad Zimmerman.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chad Zimmerman, Zimmermann. The next matter before the board today pertains to several unopposed petitions to withdraw applications or surrender the credentials of the following individuals and entities: Johan Sigvardsson, Julie Cameron Doe, Karen Flores, Amir Levy, Clark Warren, Eugene Cherner, Andrew Smith, Lawrence Hanlon, Kyo Wong Huang, Andy Ashwarji, Jamie R. Wolf, Michael Berkeley, Scott Butera, David Gandler, Julie M. Haddon, Alberto Huerla Suarez, John Janidis, Daniel Leff, Laura Onopchenko, Gina Sheldon, Nicola DeNaples, and Julian DeNaples. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objections to any of these withdrawals or surrenders. As a result, if the board chooses to, in nearly every case, it would be doing so without prejudice to the requester. However, the request to surrender Nicola DeNaples' principal license is with prejudice. These matters are all now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board issue orders to approve the withdrawals and surrenders as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Next before the board for consideration are 5 reports and recommendations received from the Office of Hearings and Appeals. These reports and recommendations, along with the evidentiary record for each hearing, have been provided to the board in advance of this meeting. Additionally, the persons involved have each been notified that the board is considering their matter today and that each have the ability to come forward and briefly address the board. If any of the persons who are the subject of one of these reports and recommendations would like to address the board, I would ask them to come forward when their matter is called. Stephen Knight is the first report and recommendation before the board today. Mr. Knight holds a gaming employee occupation permit and is employed as a count room representative at Harrah's Philadelphia Casino and Racetrack. On October 3, 2022, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for an emergency suspension of Mr. Knight's permit after receiving notice that he had been charged with criminal offenses stemming from allegations that he had lied on applications to purchase firearms. As a result of these charges, the board's executive director issued an emergency order suspending Mr. Knight's permit as requested by OEC. A hearing in this matter was held on October 20th, 2022. OEC appeared offering testimony and documentary evidence. Mr. Knight appeared but did not present any testimony. Based upon the evidence received, the report and recommendation issued in this matter recommends that given the nature of the pending offenses, the suspension of Mr. Knight's gaming permit is valid and should remain in effect. This matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel that the emergency suspension of Stephen Knight's gaming employee occupation permit remain in effect.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Next before the board is the report and recommendation pertaining to Jamila Mack's request for removal from the board's involuntary exclusion list. On April 21st, 2021, the board granted the Office of Enforcement Counsel's request to enter default judgment and place Ms. Mack on the board's involuntary exclusion list. The underlying facts in this matter are that on July 3rd, 2020, Jamila Mack, her husband's mother, left 2 children, ages 12 and 5, alone in their vehicle for approximately 2 hours between the hours of 3 and 5 a.m. while they attended the casino. No criminal charges were filed, and Ms. Mack and her husband were permanently evicted from the casino. On July 5th, 2022, Ms. Mack filed a petition requesting early removal from the involuntary exclusion list. A hearing in this matter was held on October 4th, 2022. OEC appeared and presented testimony and documentary evidence. Ms. Mack appeared and testified on her own behalf. She stated that she, her husband, her mother-in-law, and her husband's stepfather, along with the children, had been traveling and had been driving a long time, that they stopped at the casino, and that the husband's stepfather was supposed to stay in the car while the children slept. She further stated that she did not know that her husband's stepfather had gone into the casino, leaving the children alone. She also stated that she is the stepmother of the children, yet is the only one she feels being held responsible for the children being left in the vehicle. She believes that as the stepmother, she should not be the only one held responsible for the incident. Subsequent to the hearing, a report and recommendation was issued recommending denial of Ms. Mack's request for early removal from the involuntary exclusion list, as she did not present evidence of extraordinary circumstances which would justify removal from the list before at least 5 years had run, as required by the regulations. This matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Jamila Mack remain on the involuntary exclusion list.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Next before the board is another report and recommendation pertaining a request for early removal from the involuntary exclusion list. On September 29, 2020, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Rebecca Yandoli on the board's involuntary exclusion list after it was discovered that on November 16, 2019, Ms. Yandoli left her 4-year-old daughter alone in a hotel room at Wind Creek, Bethlehem at around 1 a.m. while she gamed in the casino. Ms. Yandoli's daughter left the hotel room, attempted to enter several other rooms, and then took the elevator to the hotel lobby. Ms. Yandoli was then found on the gaming floor, and she was arrested and charged with endangering the welfare of a child. A hearing in this matter was held April in 2021, and on August 11th of that year, the board issued an order placing Ms. Yandoli on the exclusion list. On July 25th, Ms. Yandoli filed her request for removal from the involuntary exclusion list. OEC filed an answer objecting to the request, and a hearing was held in the matter October 25th of 2022. OEC appeared and testified and presented documentary evidence. Ms. Yandoli appeared and testified on her own behalf. Ms. Yandoli testified that she had successfully completed her probation in July of 2022, approximately 3 years early, based on her endangering the welfare of a child charge. Ms. Yandoli provided documentation supporting her testimony, which include character reference letters of the strides she had made in her life surrounding her parenting. She stated that she is driven to create a better life for her and her child, and she's trying to put this criminal conduct behind her and has no interest in gaming. Subsequent to the hearing, the report and recommendation was issued, recommending denial of Ms. Yandoli's request for early removal from the exclusion list, as she did not present any evidence of extraordinary circumstance that would justify removal from the list prior to 5 years. This matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Rebecca Yandoli remain on the involuntary exclusion list.
Commissioner Dillon, seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
The next report and recommendation before the board stems from a request by a person with the initials EB for removal from the self-exclusion list. On April 17, 2022, an individual with the initials EB submitted a request through the board's website to be placed on the casino self-exclusion list, choosing the lifetime exclusion option. On July 30th of 2022, EB filed the instant petition requesting removal from the list. OEC filed an answer objecting to the request. A hearing in this matter was held on October 11th of 2022. OEC appeared and presented testimony and documentary evidence. EB appeared and testified on his own behalf. OEC provided the testimony from the director of the board's Office of Compulsive and Problem Gambling regarding the self-exclusion documents and the acknowledgments that EB had signed choosing his self-exclusion period, acknowledging that he was excluding himself from all Pennsylvania casinos and gaming-related activities, including retail sports wagering. EB signed all of these forms, which told him that he could be banned from other venues, gaming and non-gaming, including hotels and restaurants. EB testified that he was having trouble controlling his betting while using interactive gaming applications, and that he decided to exclude himself because of the ease and use of frequency with which he would receive gambling notification offers. He further testified that while on the DraftKings application, he was directed to the website for self-exclusion, and he believed that was in reference to the self-exclusion process for online casinos and not brick-and-mortar casinos, and that he would still like to place sports wagers at land-based casinos until he entered one and attempted to enter one in May and was denied entry. He further stated that he should have read the forms more thoroughly, that he is concerned that he is unable to go to casinos, restaurants, or bars to watch sporting events with his friends, and that in exchange for removal from the casino self-exclusion list, he would agree to go on the iGaming self-exclusion list. Subsequently, a report and recommendation was issued recommending denial of EB's petition, and that matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board adopt the report and recommendations issued by the Office of Hearing and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that EB remained on the self-exclusion list.
Commissioner Manzano-Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The final report and recommendation before the board today stems from a request to recover funds that were confiscated from an individual while gaming while on the self-exclusion list. As the board is aware, when a self-excluded person is found in Pennsylvania casinos, the act dictates that any winnings possessed by the person shall be confiscated from him or her and used to support compulsive and problem gambling programs. On June 15, 2022, PH filed a petition for recovery of funds confiscated from her. A hearing in this matter was held on October 27, 2022. OEC appeared and presented testimony and documentary evidence, and PH appeared and testified on her own behalf. The underlying facts in this matter are that on June 14, 2019, PH met face-to-face with a casino compliance representative at Rivers Casino Philadelphia and submitted a request to be placed on the self-exclusion list for a period of 1 year. At that time, PH signed all the necessary paperwork for placement on the self-exclusion list, which included an acknowledgement that, during the period of self-exclusion, PH could not collect any winnings or recover any losses resulting from gaming while on the list, and that she would remain on the list unless and until she requested and was granted removal. On October 12, 2020, while still on the self-exclusion list, PH gamed at Rivers Philadelphia and won a $1,600 jackpot that it was confiscated from her after being identified as a self-excluded person. Casino personnel also confiscated PH's remaining credits on the machine, which she admitted to staff had previously been won during her time in the casino. The next day, October 13, 2020, PH successfully completed the form for removal from the list. In May 2022, PH contacted the board's Bureau of Compulsive and Problem Gambling, requesting that her removal date be modified because she believed that the self-exclusion program had been broken and that her request was denied by the system operating improperly. PH also testified at the hearing that what prompted her to enter the facility during her period of self-exclusion was that she received an email from the facility regarding a promotional offer surrounding converting change to cash in exchange for potential free play. After hearing all the evidence presented, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that PH's request be denied, and this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Chad, do we know if the casino is being held accountable for sending out promotional materials to somebody on the exclusion list?
I've had contact with the Office of Compulsive and Problem Gambling, and I will be contacting the Bureau of Casino Compliance as well to check in. This obviously was about 2.5 years ago, so I will be following up on all of that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board reject the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that PH's petition be approved in part. Given that PH's presence in a licensed facility while on the self-exclusion list was prompted by a promotional email received from the facility, she shall have $800 of the confiscated funds returned to her, and the remainder shall be remitted to the board's Office of Compulsive and Problem Gambling.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes the matters of the Office of Chief Justice.
Thank you, Steve and Chad.
You got a promotion.
Madam Chair, before we move forward, I would just ask Chief Counsel not to move forward on the matter involving PH, as we do have a pending investigation in that matter, as far as the casino is concerned.
Oh, okay. That sounds fine. Thank you. We will now have the Bureau of Licensing matters presented by the Director of the Bureau of Licensing, Sean Hannon. Sean?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. The first matter for your consideration is the approval of SC Gaming OpCo LLC's Category 4 license. The license approval hearing for this entity is now complete. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report regarding the approval. As a result, the license approval is ready for your consideration. I have provided you with the draft order and asked the board consider the order to approve the Category 4 license for SC Gaming OpCo LLC.
Any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant the Category 4 license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Next is a management company license for Bally, Pennsylvania LLC. Bally's has applied to become the management company for SC Gaming OpCo LLC. Bally's Pennsylvania LLC was formed on October 4th, 2021 in Delaware with its principal place of business in Providence, Rhode Island. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. As a result, the license approval is ready for your consideration. I have provided you with a draft order and asked the board consider the order to approve the management company license for Bally's Pennsylvania LLC.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board grant the management company license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
In addition, is an interactive gaming manufacturer license for Wasden, PA LLC. Wasden develops and distributes online slot machines and table games. Wasden, PA LLC was formed on October 13th, 2020, with its principal place of business in Florham Park, New Jersey. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. As a result, the license approval is ready for your consideration. I have provided you with the draft order and asked the board consider the order to approve the interactive gaming manufacturer license for Wasden, PA LLC.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant the interactive gaming manufacturer license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Next, we have consideration of a VGT establishment license for CHR Corp. Doing business as Rutter's Store Number 80, who was previously approved for a conditional license. VGT establishments are truck stops seeking to have a terminal operator license to place VGTs at their location. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has now completed its investigation, including evaluation that the applicant meets the VGT establishment eligibility criteria in the Gaming Act. The Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. The license approval is now ready for consideration. I have provided you with a draft order and ask that you consider the order to approve the VGT establishment license for CHR Corp. Doing business as Rutter's Store Number 80, located at 1160 Center Turnpike in Orwigsburg.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant the video gaming terminal establishment license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is adopted.
Also, we have consideration of a conditional VGT establishment license for Dandy Mini Marts Incorporated, located at 78 White Wagon Road in Sayre. The board may conditionally license an establishment provided the applicant has never been convicted of a felony, is current on state taxes, submitted a completed application, and has not been convicted of a gambling law violation. A preliminary review of this applicant indicates that they meet this criteria. Please note that this is strictly a conditional approval. Final approval will be based on the applicant meeting all the eligibility criteria provided in the statute. A final eligibility determination will follow investigation and site inspection by the Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement. I have provided you with a draft order and ask the board consider a motion to approve the conditional VGT establishment license for Dandy Mini Marts Incorporated.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the conditional video gaming terminal establishment license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Next, there are principal entity, and affiliate licenses. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with a proposed order for 4 principals, 1 principal entity, and 2 affiliates. I ask the board consider the order approving these licenses.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board grant the principal entity, and affiliated licenses as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
There are also principal and key employee temporary credentials. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order regarding the issuance of temporary credentials for 1 principal and 12 key employees. I ask the board consider the order approving these credentials.
Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the temporary principal and key employee credentials as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Additionally, for your consideration are gaming employee permits and non-gaming employee registrations. The Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a list of 543 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted temporary or full occupation permits, and 196 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted registrations under the authority delegated to the Bureau of Licensing. I ask the board consider a motion approving the order.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the applications for gaming employee occupation permits and non-gaming employee registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next, there is a recommendation of denial for 1 non-gaming applicant. The applicant was notified that they were being recommended for denial and failed to request a hearing within the specified time frame. The Bureau of Licensing has provided you with the order addressing the applicant, who the Office of Enforcement Counsel has recommended for denial. I ask the board consider the order approving this denial.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel continues to request a denial in this matter.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board deny the gaming and non-gaming employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter for your consideration is withdrawal requests. In each case, the license, permit, or registration is no longer required. For today's meeting, I have provided the board with 105 gaming and 11 non-gaming applicants. I ask the board consider the order approving these withdrawals.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant the withdrawal of key employee gaming and non-gaming employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
In addition, we have an order to renew the gaming service provider certifications for Villa Pizza of Pennsylvania Incorporated and Chopstick Asian Cuisine Incorporated, as well as initially certify Rycon Construction Incorporated and Poole Anderson Construction LLC. I have provided you with a draft order and ask the board consider the order certifying Villa Pizza of Pennsylvania, Chopstick Asian Cuisine Incorporated, Rycon Construction Incorporated, and Poole Anderson Construction LLC.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the gaming service provider certifications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Finally, for consideration are gaming service provider registrations. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order and an attached list of 13 registered gaming service provider applicants. I ask the board consider the order registering these gaming service providers.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the gaming service provider registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sean. Next is Chief Enforcement Counsel Cyrus Petrie.
Good afternoon. The Office of Enforcement Counsel will present 12 matters today for the board's consideration, in which we will request the approval of 1 suspension and 11 involuntary exclusions. The next matter on the agenda consists of an enforcement action in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint seeking the suspension of a non-gaming employee registration previously issued by the board. The complaint has been filed with the board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in the complaint. The individual named in the complaint failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in the matter and properly served the same upon the respondent. Therefore, the facts in the complaint are deemed admitted. All filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matter is presently ripe for the board's consideration. Assistant Enforcement Counsel Stephen Gorman will provide a brief summary of the facts and make a request for the appropriate board action.
Good afternoon, Chair, Madam Chair, members of the board. Assistant Enforcement Counsel Steve Gorman, Gorman. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the suspension of the non-gaming employee registration issued to Prudence Reed. Ms. Reed was previously employed as an EVT attendant at Lady Luck Casino. Ms. Reed entered Lady Luck as a patron and gamed at slot machines prior to the end of her post-employment prohibition on wagering at the casino where she was once deployed. Ms. Reed was on the gaming floor for approximately 1 hour prior to the discovery by Lady Luck Security. Ms. Reed was escorted out of the casino but was not formally evicted. She is not currently employed in the Pennsylvania's gaming industry. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board suspend the non-gaming employee registration issued to Prudence Reed.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the suspension of Prudence Reed's non-gaming employee registration for a period of 2 weeks for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Is that 2 weeks from today's date?
I believe so, yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The remaining matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed petitions seeking the involuntary exclusion of individuals whose presence in a licensed facility are inimical to the interests of the Commonwealth and are licensed gaming therein. In each instance, the petition for exclusion has been filed with the Board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in the petition. The individual named in each petition failed to respond within 30 days as required by Board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in each matter and properly served the same upon each individual. Therefore, all facts in each petition are deemed admitted. All filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. In each instance, if the board orders the proposed exclusion, each individual's photo, personal identifiers, and a summary of their inimical conduct will be placed on the board's public website. Once again, in each matter, we will provide a summary of the facts and make a request for the appropriate board action.
Next matter on the agenda is a request to place Zachary Jackson on the involuntary exclusion list. Zachary Jackson left a 13-year-old child unattended at Harrah's Philadelphia Casino shortly after being turned away from the gaming floor by security. Mr. Jackson told security that there was another adult waiting in the vehicle in the parking garage who could watch the child. Surveillance tracked the child and Mr. Jackson back to the vehicle and could not see an adult. Mr. Jackson left the child unattended in the lobby before going back to the vehicle and returned to the casino. Surveillance triggered notification to security at this time. Meanwhile, Mr. Jackson went back onto the gaming floor and went to the sports book in order to place a wager. In total, Mr. Jackson left a 13-year-old child unattended for 15 minutes. No criminal charges were filed. Mr. Jackson was permanently evicted from Harrah's Philadelphia. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Zachary Jackson on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the addition of Zachary Jackson to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
The next matter on the agenda is a request to place Stephen Kakulis on the involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Kakulis stole a jacket from the gift shop inside Live Philadelphia Casino. The shop attendant notified security, but Mr. Kakulis left the casino prior to apprehension. 2 days later, Mr. Kakulis returned to Live Philadelphia gift shop and attempted to steal a water bottle or a bottle of soda while making another transaction. The shop attendant stopped him and made him return the bottle. Live security and the Pennsylvania State Police spoke with Mr. Kakulis. No criminal charges were filed, and Mr. Kakulis was permanently evicted from Live Philadelphia. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Stephen Kakulis on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the addition of Stephen Kakulis to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All opposed? Motion is adopted. Just for a moment, I want to just correct the record that Acting Secretary Brown has left, and Kristen Heidingsfelder is now representing Acting Secretary Brown for the remainder of the proceedings. Thank you, Kristen.
The next matter on the agenda is a request to place Monther Madanat on the involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Madanat illegally moved and pinched his bets while playing poker at Hollywood Morgantown. A tables game manager caught Mr. Madanat pinching a $5 bet and made him return the bet to the table. Surveillance and table games management then reviewed Mr. Madanat's previous plays, and they determined that at least 17 other pinches and illegal moves had occurred. The Pennsylvania State Police charged Mr. Madanat with misdemeanor manipulating a win-loss, misdemeanor fraudulent claim, and misdemeanor theft charges. Mr. Madanat is currently in the Accelerated Disposition Program in Berks County. He was permanently evicted from Hollywood Morgantown. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Monther Madanat on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the addition of Monther Madanat to the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board's involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next two matters on the agenda are related on requests to place Marilyn Mims and Anthony Pape on the involuntary exclusion list. With the board's permission, I'll read one set of facts and then request that each individual be placed on the exclusion list. Marilyn Mims and Anthony Pape were driving around the parking lot of Mohegan, Pennsylvania, attempting to break into various parked cars. Miss Mims drove Mr. Pape around to different areas of the parking lot and would wait for Mr. Pape to open up any unlocked doors on cars and retrieve any belongings. Mr. Pape tried to open at least 10 different vehicles and was able to access at least 2 of them. Security saw one of the break-ins and notified the Plains Township Police Department. Officers arrived and stopped Miss Mims and Mr. Pape in their vehicle. All stolen items were recovered. No criminal charges were filed. Mr. Pape and Miss Mims were both permanently evicted from the casino. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Marilyn Mims on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the addition of Marilyn Mims to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Anthony Pape on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the addition of Anthony Pape in the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
The next matter on the agenda is a request to place Matthew Morant on the involuntary exclusion list. Matthew Morant left a 12-year-old child unattended in his vehicle in the parking lot at Valley Forge Casino Resort while he went inside and cashed out 2 winning sportsbook wagers. When Mr. Morant first had arrived on the casino property, he attempted to park his vehicle outside the main entrance. Valley Forge security approached Mr. Morant and told him to move his vehicle. Security noticed that there was a child in the car as Mr. Morant drove to the parking lot and was out of sight. Mr. Morant parked his car in the parking lot and left the car unattended. Security notified Valley Forge surveillance of the incident, and Mr. Morant's vehicle was located. Security also notified the Pennsylvania State Police and the Upper Marion Township Police Department. Mr. Morant was away from the child for 5 minutes. No criminal charges were filed, and Mr. Morant was permanently evicted from Valley Forge for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the board place Matthew Morant on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the addition of Matthew Morant to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda is a request to place Sydney Slaymaker on the involuntary exclusion list. Ms. Slaymaker left a 2-year-old child and a 14-year-old child unattended in her vehicle in the parking lot of Mohegan, Pennsylvania, while she was gaming at slot machines. A passing security shuttle saw the 14-year-old sitting in the vehicle with the door open. Security approached the vehicle and notified surveillance and the Plains Township Police Department. At the same time, Ms. Slaymaker was returning to her vehicle and was stopped by security. Police responded and spoke with Ms. Slaymaker, but no charges were filed. She was away from the child for 2 hours and 6 minutes. She was permanently evicted from Mohegan, Pennsylvania for her actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Sydney Slaymaker on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the addition of Sydney Slaymaker to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Juan Sanchez, SANCHEZ, Assistant Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Brian Donovan on the board's involuntary exclusion list. While Mr. Donovan was a patron at Valley Forge Casino, he engaged in a verbal and physical altercation wherein he struck a female patron in the face, causing her nose and mouth to bleed. Mr. Donovan was permanently evicted from Valley Forge. Upper Merion Police Department responded and filed criminal charges against Mr. Donovan, to which he pled guilty. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Brian Donovan on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the addition of Brian Donovan to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Alexis Gonzalez Garcia on the board's involuntary exclusion list. While Mr. Gonzalez Garcia was a patron at Valley Forge Casino Resort, he entered the casino with 2 other adults and 5 children. The ages of the children at the time of the incident were 1-year-old, 9 years old, 10-year-old, and a 14-year-old, and the 5th was an infant. Mr. Gonzalez Garcia left the children unattended inside the casino food court for 72 minutes while he played slot machines. Mr. Gonzalez Garcia was permanently evicted from the casino, but no criminal charges were filed as a result of this incident. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Alexis Gonzalez Garcia on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the addition of Alexis Gonzalez Garcia to the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board's involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Lindsay Veron on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Ms. Veron was a patron at Mount Airy Casino. She stole a wallet of another patron with over $300 inside. Ms. Veron was permanently evicted from the casino. The Pennsylvania State Police were notified and criminal charges were filed. At this time, OEC requests the board place Lindsay Veron on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the addition of Lindsay Veron to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Good afternoon, Thomas Monahan, M-O-N-A-G-H-A-N, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The final matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Chad Martin on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Martin stole a purse that was left behind by a patron at a slot machine at Rivers Casino, Pittsburgh. As the items in the purse were recovered, no criminal charges were filed. Mr. Martin was permanently evicted from Rivers, Pittsburgh for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Chad Martin on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the addition of Chad Martin to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's adopted.
Thank you. That concludes our business.
Thank you. And that concludes today's meeting. The next public meeting of the board will be held on Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, at 10 a.m. at this location. And now, may I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Commissioner Regan moves to adjourn.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned. Commissioner Mustio, you're missing snow up here.
Amen.
All right, thanks you, everybody.
Take care.